Hello, America. Welcome to Your Leo Nation, where we believe in and support the rule of law. I am the Chief, Mark Garrett. As I always say, the happily retired former Chief, Mark Garrett. Joining us today is Officer Marcelo Arrue, who happens to be my best friend. Officer Arrue, how are you today, sir?
Oh, just fine and dandy, Mark. Happy Thanksgiving to you, the family, and all your Floridians. And that's as far as I go. I don't, you know.
The flourishing Floridians.
That's
And
right.
yes, happy belated Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday and with your friends. You know, it's a huge topic, Marcelo, in law enforcement, the law enforcement community, and that topic is women in law enforcement. And we've done a couple of videos over the last couple of years. One specifically with a female deputy who was involved in a shooting, and we got a lot of feedback about that. Some of the feedback we got what these blanket statements about, well, women should not be in law enforcement, period, blah blah blah. I'm thinking of this like, really, women shouldn't be in law enforcement? You're just going to make that overriding blanket, non-negotiable statement rather than
Right.
looking at cases and people, case by case individually, which I think what most grown-ups would do. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we actually get into some stuff here, some written documentation, some opinions, I want to play this video. This is an Arkansas state trooper, a female state trooper. And I want you to go and watch this. Anthony, go ahead and hit it. Now we're going to pause that video right there. It's not a very long video, but just to give you a little bit of background, we didn't show you the entire pursuit. This pursuit went on for some time. And Marcelo, you and I were talking off camera about this, about the whole time that we could see. We didn't hear this officer putting out our location,
Yeah.
asking for backup. It may have happened. We just couldn't hear it in the portion that was available to us.
Right.
Um, kind of a side note, but the point is, this officer, this trooper, she's in a high speed pursuit, and like most pursuits, or a good majority of them, have no idea who's in the car, who's driving the car, what's going on. These are dangerous, dangerous situations. Um, I know you've been in your fair share of pursuits over the years.
Yeah. And absolutely, you're absolutely right. This pursuit went on for a bit, and then when he does try to pull over, he's riding that shoulder for a while. Um, Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is what you said prior was you never heard direction of travel, uh, asking for a backup, uh, nothing to that, to nothing close to that. Now, like you said, we don't know if she did that beforehand, but during the pursuit, you never heard it. Um, so your instincts should be heightened at that moment. Like there's something going on with this person. Now, remember when we run a car, and as well, and you know as well as I do, we get limited information. Um, Maybe the registered owner, if there's any warrants on the car, possibly. But it's very rare. Not that it's rare, but you don't know what this person, where he's coming from. You don't know if he just killed a few people because it hasn't been broadcasted yet. And that's why This part concerns me, that she just nonchalantly walks up to the vehicle. If you look, her gun's not out. She has nothing in her hands. Um, and she leaves a position of cover. So,
Yep. Well, these are all great points, and it really goes to the larger point of how dangerous these encounters are. And again, we're going to talk about women in law enforcement. We picked this video for a reason, this incident for a reason, because of these circumstances really, really put her or anybody, male, female, in a very, very dangerous situation. So before we watch the rest of this short video, I want to talk about an article I pulled up. This is from the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police organization. And there's a magazine there called Police Chief that they publish. And this is from March of 2024, pretty recent. This article is written by Yvonne Roman and I think with Maureen McGow. And Yvonne Roman is a retired Newark, New Jersey Police Department chief. She and Maureen McGow are the ones that conceived of, created, and implemented this program or this effort called the 30 by 30 initiative. They created this in March of 2021. Now, the 30 by 30 initiative may sound familiar to some of you who have watched our podcast regularly or just read a lot or well informed. The 30 by 30 initiative came up during the hearings with now former United States Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle, who resigned not too long after now President-elect Donald Trump was shot in Pennsylvania. She resigned after these hearings. But she was a big proponent, I guess she still is, of 30 by 30. Now, what is 30 by 30? And 30 by 30 is this initiative to have at least 30% of the U.S. law enforcement population and makeup to be females by the year 2030. So we can talk about, and we're going to talk about, quite a bit here, but my question is this. One of my questions, Marcelo, is if there's an initiative to have 30% of all law enforcement officers, federal, state, county, local, to be female by the year 3030, why not have it be 50% by the year 3030?
Yeah.
Women make up more than 50% of our population, if my memory serves me correct. So why wouldn't it be 50%? Why 30? Do you have any thoughts on this? I don't. I don't know why it wouldn't be 50.
Yeah, I don't really know why they chose the number 30. I really don't. I think for law enforcement, I think the biggest concern is why push just one gender? Why not just say we want to increase law enforcement by 30% because we need good officers out there? Why females? And so you start to think about this and you start going, what if it was the other way around? What if we said we want to increase law enforcement by 30% of just males?
Mm-hmm.
Would there be a backlash? And so for the law enforcement officers, for those officers that are out there, are you overseeing good male candidates to meet that agenda?
Or you mean overlooking? You said
Overlooking.
overseeing.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
not overseeing.
I just want to make
Overlooking.
sure.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
overlooking male candidates, good male candidates, just to meet that agenda. I mean, wouldn't that be called sexist? And there's a lot of other underlying issues that come with that. Are you choosing a female, obviously, just because she's a female and maybe not able to do this job? And what harm are you causing to her and to the people that are in that agency? I mean, So there's a lot of underlying things that we can talk about here. I am definitely not for that. Um, I think for us, it's just let's increase law enforcement by 30%.
100%.
Yeah.
I I agree with you, of course. And um, in other words, whenever you target any demographic, whenever you do, and say we are going to increase numbers, then there is at least the belief that you have to something has to give. In other words, unless an agency is provably sexist or racist, whatever it is. In other words, if they are overtly excluding a group, they haven't been. And you and I have been in law enforcement. I mean, a long time. And the respective agencies that we've worked for, I don't believe have ever in our tenure
Hmm.
have purposely, intentionally excluded any group. To the contrary, there have been all types of recruitment efforts, outreach programs to target certain groups to get into the pipeline. So, unless that's actually going on, that agencies are purposely excluding certain groups, the question is, well, why aren't there more women in law enforcement? And I think that should be an absolutely fair question to ask. Why aren't there more women in law enforcement if agencies aren't excluding them? Back to this article about 30 by 30. One of the things here is their goals advancing women in law enforcement is a matter of public safety. Now, this is a claim that
Mm,
they make in this article.
yeah.
I pulled this article on purpose because it's strongly in favor of 30% women in law enforcement by the year 2030.
Mm-hmm.
Enhancing the diversity of police agencies to better reflect the communities they serve has long been recognized as a crucial step in fostering community trust. Now, I've heard that. I was in recruitment. I was in public affairs for the California Highway Patrol. I've been told that. I've heard that. I don't think that's provable. It might be right, but when you write it like this, it's like it's set in stone. It's gospel that yes, it's a long realized fact that
Right.
diversity in law enforcement is going to make law enforcement stronger, the community safer, the organization more effective, more efficient. Why that is a claim, I don't know. I don't know if there's any empirical data that suggests this is accurate. Maybe it's out
Right.
there. I've never seen it. Um, this whole thing's like, when I went into the doctor a few weeks ago to have him look at my shoulder that's been killing me for months now and aching, blah, 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 I didn't give a damn what he or she looked like when I walked in. Do you have a degree? Did you get a medical degree? Were
Exactly.
you top of your class? Do you know
Yep.
what you're doing? I don't
Hmm.
care if they have three arms and mismatched eyes. Can you do the job that I'm here to pay to have done? And I think that you and I feel the same way about law enforcement. That's all we care
Oh,
about. Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Are you qualified? That's the bottom line. Are you qualified? Do you meet the expectations of that department? And if you do, great. No one's going to dispute that. But to say that uh, women officers make the community safer, well, I mean, logic tells us that just says it doesn't that it makes no sense. You know, tell me why. Tell me why women officers, in quotes, make the community safer. How come not men?
Marcelo, it's a great question you bring up, and I know you haven't seen this article, but guess what? The next paragraph. Listen to this. Listen to this. A growing body of scientific evidence. Now, again, they don't cite what the quote unquote evidence is in this article.
Of course
I
not.
read the whole thing twice. I said, okay, let me footnote it. Let me do some additional
Right,
research. There's
right.
something there. A growing body of scientific evidence demonstrates the unique contributions of women officers. Now, before I go further, and this is a theme that runs through this article, Marcelo, about the uniqueness of women and these abilities and that ability, but at the same time, we're told, not only in this article, but certainly in the larger society right now, in this culture, that there are no differences between men and women. We're being in, we're being indoctrinated by that. There are no differences. There are no differences between men and women. I'm not making this up. Everybody
Right.
listening knows that we're being told this every single day by mainstream media and advocacy groups. There are no differences between men and women, which I think is it's bunk. It's a
Of
lie.
course. Of course.
But we're being told that. At the same time, the people who want to target, they want to increase law enforcement personnel to be 30% female by the year 2030, are here in this article, are telling us about the uniqueness of women, an absolute contradiction. Though further research is needed, preliminary findings indicate that women officers use less force and excessive force less often and use their discretion to make fewer arrests for minor and misdemeanor offenses. The search drivers less they search drivers less often during traffic stops. But when they do conduct a search, they are more likely to find contraband. They fire their service weapon less often. Now, I call this a big duh. No kidding. In other words, this may be accurate, but what they wrote. But listen to this. Though further research is needed, preliminary findings indicate that women officers use less force and excessive force less often and use their discretion to make fewer arrests for minor misdemeanor offenses. They search drivers less often during traffic stops. Well, guess what? If you're being less proactive, if you're searching people at a lower rate than your male counterparts, guess what's going to happen? You make fewer arrests. When you only search somebody because they are a felony suspect or they're on parole, which requires no consent, requires no warrant when someone's on parole. Well, if you only search people there, your likelihood of in other words, your percentage of finding contraband or illegal weapons is going to be higher because you are now searching people who are known criminals. But if you're proactive and you walk up to a car or you make a contact on the side, or whatever it is, and you say, "Hey, can I get a consent to search your vehicle? Can I
Right.
search your person?" And someone gives you the consent. Well, your chances are lower because you don't have as much information about that person as you do if you have a felony reason to do it. This is a big no brainer. This is how numbers and percentages are skewed to make a point.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, and it's like you said that when you read an article, and this is to everyone, and when you read an article and they cite or they say that it's scientific analysis, and yet they don't give you the the source that they spoke to or the source that they read, you know that's a red flag right there. That's a red flag. Uh, the other thing is after years and years, 22 years of being on the streets and on all your experience, I can tell you in my experience, male officers are more likely to be more proactive than female officers, and it's just because they're males. That's just their nature. Now, are they all that way? No, they're not all that way. Do I disagree with people that say that no women should be in law enforcement? No. Do I know some women that are, I mean, just go getters? Yes, a few. But the percentages of male that are more proactive than females, there's no comparison. There's no comparison. And of
Well,
course, because of that, that's why they get into a lot less uses of force, a lot less shootings, etc.
again, Marcelo, to your point, to your point, we are being immersed in the notion of toxic masculinity, right? We're being
Yeah.
told how toxic males are, how aggressive, things like that. But then when it comes to law enforcement, again, there's no difference.
Right.
Unless we're talking about the unique qualities of women, then there is a difference. It's so convoluted. You can't have it both ways. Like you said, are males more naturally aggressive than women? You and I think so. I
Yeah.
think most people who believe what they see in front of their eyes think so. By the way, not just law enforcement. Forget about law enforcement. What is the percentage of males to females when it comes to across the nation violent offenders? Are there more male violent offenders or more female violent offenders? I think the answer is obvious. So does that go to male aggressiveness? I would say probably yes. I'm being a little bit facetious here, obviously.
Okay. Right.
So within the confines of policy, law, training, experience, would it make sense that male officers are more aggressive within their prescribed duties and roles than female officers are? Not every, like you said, you made a great point. Not every single male versus every single female. We're talking about generalities here. Are male officers more aggressive in this type of enforcement activity than women?
Right.
Uh, I would think so based on my experience as well. Um, Let me continue here, and we're going to get to this video. And there's a reason we picked this video because, Marcel, you and I are talking about case by case basis here. See, you and I don't believe, we never believe, since we've been, before we were law enforcement, I think we talked about these things to some extent.
Yeah.
We don't believe in a an exclusion of women in law enforcement. We believe in standards. Simple as that. I think it's fair to
Absolutely.
say.
Yep.
So this here, it says one of the one of the titles here, one of the subtitles, equity, not tokenism. The same article. The 30 by 30 initiative and the 30 by 30 pledge have gotten a nearly universal positive response, including many passionate advocates who have taken up the mantle of gender equity in their own agencies. Now, to get a positive response from somebody already philosophically aligned with you is not really a surprise. It said the mantle of gender equity in their own agencies. Now, by the way, the word equity, we talked about this the last, well, how many years now? Equity is a lot different than equality. Equality is
Right.
is equal opportunity. Equity is determining, guaranteeing the same outcome, which is extremely dangerous. And I'll give you a
Absolutely.
chance to talk about that.
Yeah. The one of the things that really gets under my skin, and I know a lot of law enforcement officers, is what we talked about, is the qualifications. Are you lowering the qualifications to hire more female officers? Are you lowering the qualifications for them to get into certain units? Um, has that happened? Absolutely. I can tell you that an elite unit in the LAPD went from a 3 mile run to a mile and a half run. And there was a reason for that. It went from at least one pull up to attempted pull up. That means you don't even have to do one, just got to attempt it. Now, I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that was not for males.
Mhm.
That was not for males.
Mhm.
This has been happening way before. In 2008, I can go back where if you were part or if you wanted to pass bike school, bicycle patrol school, you had to start on this hill, and the hill was only about, I'd say maybe, I want to say a mile, but I think it was a lot less than that. Anyway, the point is that you were supposed to get to the top in 8 minutes. Doable? Absolutely. Very doable. But what happened is a lot of women weren't passing that. And so that was a pass or fail. If you failed that, you were disqualified and you had to go back to your division. Your bicycle school was over, and they got rid of it. They got rid of it because of what we're talking about. There wasn't enough females passing that, so the
Mhm.
department said you got to do away with it.
Now,
And
Marcel, let me interrupt you. Did
yep.
you, like I said, we want to footnote stuff, and I don't want you to use any names, things like that. But did you actually hear that from people in decision making process? Positions that, well, there are not enough females are passing this part of the exam, so we're going to modify things, or was that an assumption? And by the way, probably a pretty logical assumption. Was it just an assumption that you and other in the rank and file made, or did you hear that from decision makers?
I heard that from the actual instructors that
There you go.
instructed the
Okay.
school, and
Mm-hmm.
because when I went back to that school, I thought it was a great school. It's a week long,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not an easy school because
I
they
remember when we
did,
went through it. I remember when we
yeah,
went through it.
yeah, and it was you're riding with all your equipment, very different than the bike riding you and I did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're riding with all your equipment, and when I went back to help out because I enjoyed the school and I volunteered to help out, I asked them, "Hey, when's the hill test?" And he goes, "Oh, we can't do that anymore." And without naming names, they told me the reason why, and it was because there wasn't enough females passing it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
so,
again, go ahead and
no,
finish your
no,
thought.
no, and so you have these instructors that have to follow the rules that the department gives them.
Mm-hmm.
But were they frustrated about it? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely they
Mm-hmm.
were, because at the time that I went through the school, there were females that passed it.
Right.
Now,
This is the point.
exactly, out of five females, maybe two passed it, but they did
Mhm.
pass it.
Right.
And so even even though the school sent you out a form or an email telling you, "Hey, you need to prepare for this class. If you're not an avid bike rider, you should start riding because we do A, B, and C." And they basically wrote it out for you. Hey, this day we're riding 10 miles. This day we're riding 15 miles. They basically gave you the schedule of the school. And so they would send those things out, and yet you still had people that didn't pass the school because they didn't take it serious enough.
Mm-hmm. By the
But
way, men and women,
men and women,
men
absolutely.
and women who didn't pass these standards. So again, it's almost like you read this article, and I'm telling everybody you didn't see this before
No,
before this show,
no.
like anybody else. But I thought it was appropriate. But what timing? You went right into this. Let me read part of this. It is not surprising that the status quo does not contemplate the unique needs of women officers nor capture the unique value. Again, going back to this assertion that women have these unique qualities that men don't possess, the same time in culture we're being told that there's no difference between men and women. The assertion is not that women should get preferential treatment, but that they deserve an equitable shot. For example, blah, blah, blah. The greatest misunderstanding is around physical fitness assessments. Data show that many departments lose disproportionate numbers of women applicants at the physical fitness assessment. In most departments, these assessments have never been validated, meaning there's no evidence as to whether they actually measure what's required to do the job well. 30 by 30 does not advocate for agencies to eliminate the physical fitness exam or hold women to different or lower standards, but it does advocate for agencies to use hiring processes to accurately assess a candidate's ability to do the job. That last part, they want the department to accurately assess a candidate's ability to do the job.
Yeah,
But also, right before
that's another way of saying lowering the standards. It's
lowering
just a
standards,
nicer way. Yeah,
yes. Well, earlier on, it says that there's no evidence. In most departments, these assessments have never been validated, meaning there's no evidence as to whether they actually measure what's required of the job. And that last part, but they want to make sure that agencies use a process that accurately assess a candidate's ability to do the job. In other words, when it comes to physical fitness, whatever standards may be in place, well, they're just arbitrary. They don't mean anything. By the way, to a large extent, they are arbitrary, but they are consistent no matter who you are. They are
exactly.
consistent. They may be arbitrary, fair enough.
Right,
One pull up, no pull up, 8 mile climb to the top of the hill, but they're the same for everybody. So you can't call them discriminatory because they're consistent for everybody. You can call them arbitrary, and
right,
by the way, they are to
right,
some extent. But then later on, they're saying they want them to accurately assess a candidate's ability to do the job. Well, in what sense? Their their demeanor, their writing skills, their verbal communications, their attention to detail, their driving skills. All of these things, to some extent, have an arbitrary element to them. Nothing's exact. Oh, you write this well, you speak this well, you drive this well, you shoot that well, you talk that well. So you'll be the world's perfect cop. All of these
right.
are somewhat arbitrary. Nothing's perfect. But the thing is that they are consistent, the standards. They are not discriminatory. And that's the point of this, is that do we have any standards, yes or no, that are consistent? Because as law enforcement, really kind of, I think, hopefully any profession, but we're talking about law enforcement here, law enforcement is trying to do the best it can to put the best product out there, regardless of one's sex, male or female. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what, Mark? I'll use myself as an example. I don't consider myself an avid runner. In fact, the truth is, I hate running. I really
Thanks,
do.
two of us.
Yeah. But when I wanted to join an elite unit, and I knew uh, what the qualifications were, which at the time was a 3 mile run, at least attempting one pull up, I
Mhm.
went to the location where where that course was twice a week, every week for 2.5 months. And I ran that course every time I went there. And I did
Mhm.
what they call the PFQ, the physical fitness
Mhm.
qualification.
Mhm.
That was my training for the next 2.5 months. Now, I did other stuff during the week, but I made sure that I was there twice a week, every week.
Mhm.
And I did it because I knew that I was lacking in what they were looking for. They wanted someone that was physically fit to run. Now, you can argue the fact that, well, are you ever going to chase somebody for 3 miles? Probably not, but those were the qualifications. And I didn't dispute the qualifications. I didn't say, hey, excuse me, can you lower the standards for me because I don't like running? I mean, I wonder how that would have gone. But, I
Well,
went,
we both know how it would have gone for you or me if we'd done that.
of course, of course.
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
So,
Why don't you run the 300 yards back to your car and go home?
exactly. But but then we have to ask the question, why is the standard when these things start occurring that agencies start going from 3 miles to a mile and a half?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
is it that you go from doing one pull up, just one, and let me tell you, I personally saw females do the 3 mile run and do at least five pull ups. And you know
Mhm.
what they would tell me? Oh, that's all I did for the next 3 months is do a pull up because I knew I was good on the sit ups and push ups. It was the pull ups that I was going to have trouble with. But you
Yep.
know what? They took it upon themselves to prepare for the job and the requirement that was asked of males and females.
Mhm.
So So, so this is where it burns officers up when you start catering, and that's really what's going on. You start catering to a certain sex so they can meet, or like you said, uh, end up at the same level as a male.
Yeah,
Equity.
the equity program, not the equality. And by the way, to a specific sex or any specific demographic, whatever it is, for
Right.
whatever reason, and whatever level, whatever testing parameter we're talking about here, when you start catering, when you start focusing on any group, then we can run into problems. I have been an advocate all the time that I was in law enforcement, um, even before I was in recruitment. Uh, to look, for instance, going into the minority community where I grew up, to be more proactive in recruitment, because these are, this is a demographic that doesn't have a lot, and certainly a lot of positive exposure to law enforcement, and that we as law enforcement need to more heavily recruit in these areas. There are countless wonderful candidates out there who don't get exposure, um, as maybe someone from a different economic or cultural background. So let's be proactive in recruitment. But once people are in the pipeline, once they are in the process, it's hands off. That you have to succeed, you have to compete and succeed like anybody else, because our job and my job in recruitment was to get the best possible candidate with blinders on about any other immutable characteristic, their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, their ethnicity. It didn't matter. We wanted the best people in the California Highway Patrol uniform. But I have no problem. Matter of fact, I've still been a big advocate of reaching out to communities that historically may not have as much exposure to law enforcement, certainly in some positive light as others. Now, with all this said, the reason we pause this here, we're talking about this issue about thresholds and training and testing and things like this. I want everybody to watch and listen to the next few minutes of this officer who just terminated this pursuit. The pursuit came to an end. Solo unit out on a highway, Arkansas State Trooper. Anthony, hit it.
Get out of the car. Get out. Wait out. Get out of wait. Get out of the car. Roll over. Roll over right now. Why? Roll over. You're going to jail. Roll over. I'm going to pull the trigger. Why? Roll over. Roll over. Roll over on your stomach. Now. Roll over. I feel like why? Why? Roll over. Wait. Roll over on your stomach. Roll over. On your stomach. Okay, I'm done. Roll over. Okay. Now. Okay. Roll over. Okay. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. No. Roll over. Roll over. Okay. Okay. Wait. Give it to me. Roll over. Why you why? I'm saying nothing. Go to jail. Roll over. Huh? Roll over on your stomach. I'm saying what? Roll over on your stomach. Roll over. Why you only going? You're going to jail. Why? I'm saying nothing. I'm going to my house. Roll over. Roll over. I'm going to my house. Roll over. I'm going to my house. I'm going to my house. Everything. No. Why? I need to put you. Why? Why? What? Why? What's that? Why? Why? Into my home. Into my home. Give me that taser now. No. Into my home.
Stop it there, Anthony. So if you just heard that boom, that was a shot. That was a shot from her sidearm. And obviously they've been struggling over the taser. He was able to retrieve that taser from her.
Mm-hmm.
She had been, was called drive stunning him to direct contact with the skin multiple times with drive stun, and this guy is still fighting. And now, obviously, he'd been going after her gun, and this is when she fires, and that's where he's grasping the side of his head because it just grazed him. Thank God for him. But this is the fight that this officer's in. Anthony, go ahead.
Get on your back. Get on your back. Roll over. Give me your hands. What?
And Anthony, go ahead and stop it. Marcel, I'm going to give you a first crack at this as we wind this show down.
Wow. So I'll first say, good for her to take command of that situation. Tactically, when for us, when you're in some sort of a pursuit, the first thing you do not do is approach a vehicle. Um, and if you are going to approach a vehicle, especially with a single man car, you don't ever want to approach on the driver's side because now you've got two elements of danger. You got the person inside the car, and then you have vehicles on your left side. the best thing to do is to come around your car and come onto the passenger side. Now, what we call this now is tasers, bean bags, a 40 millimeter launcher. They're called intermediate force options. And the reason why we use that per policy is a threat to the safety of officers or others. And if that incident is not immediately addressed, it could escalate to a possible deadly use of force. So you use a less lethal, what's what we used to call it before, or an intermediate force option, so you don't have to use lethal force. Um, the fact, if she was an LAPD officer, let's just say, the fact that he took her uh, intermediate force option, the taser, and she went to her weapon, that's totally within policy, because that could render her uh, to have an inability to protect her weapon. So, I mean, you know what? Tactically, probably not the best approach. I love her aggressiveness, um, but I again, I don't know Arkansas. I don't know how long backup is, but man, that was a long time. I mean, six
It was.
minutes. 6 minutes is a lifetime.
I'll tell you right now, and your tactical assessment, I think, is spot on. I'll address the last thing you talked about there, though, and that's the time frame. For those of you, and it's probably the vast majority of you listening who've never been in a situation like this, where you are literally fighting for your life, 30 seconds is an eternity, let alone 4 or 5 or 6 minutes when you're waiting for backup. And then it's escalated to the point where you've drawn your firearm. I have been there, literally in the exact same situation. I remember because one of my teeth got broken in half. Of this fisticuffs I had in the mud with somebody who I had my weapon drawn on eventually. And it seemed like it took a lifetime for backup to get there. By the way, it took 6 male officers to get that suspect in handcuffs that night. I'll never forget. This guy was not going to jail. And I feel grateful to God that I came out of there alive. My broader point is this, or let me say my specific point is this. Anybody, male or female, can make tactical errors. But not every officer, deputy, trooper is going to show the aggressiveness and the courage that this female state trooper did. I said, we can talk about tactics all day long, but she did generally, I'm talking about what she was trained to do, and she showed courage, and she took this guy on with no hesitation. No hesitation. This is the point, I think, and I'll speak for my best friend Marcelo here, that we're trying to make. When you're evaluating somebody to become a police officer, it has to be a case-by-case basis. Can you, under the most trying, challenging circumstances, i.e., life and death situations, can you perform the job you have to do to save your life and to protect others? And this woman did exactly what any of us would hope that police officers can do under these circumstances. She is a poster child of the kind of partner that I want to have when it comes to kicking ass when she has to do it.
Absolutely.
There was no hesitation. And this is the point about this article and this 30 by 30. It's all meaningless unless you are trying simply to find the best people to perform the job that 99.9% of the population would never even sign up for, because they wouldn't want to find themselves in this situation. See, this trooper, she trained for and prepared for this situation. At least in her mind, she was ready for this. And
Absolutely.
this is what we're talking about on this show, ladies and gentlemen. We don't believe that all women should not be cops, and we certainly don't believe that all women who apply should be cops any more than we feel that way about men. Either way, we think that people who meet the standards should be able to put a badge on, and people who maintain their standards, those standards throughout their career. Otherwise, somebody else, male or female, in this situation, may have lost their lives. So that's my point. And Marcelo, I will give you the final word on this before we sign off for today.
Well, Mark, you're absolutely correct. And like you said, it's standards. As long as we keep the same standards for male and females, I think law enforcement is in good hands. When you start lowering your standards for a certain gender, is when it becomes a dangerous scenario, not just for officers, because some officers have to work with a female officer, but it becomes dangerous for the community because you're catering to a gender instead of saying this is the standard, here's how you can pass it, good luck. And so, my final assessment is you're absolutely right. Not all women, it is a broad generality to say no women should be in law enforcement. I disagree with that. But that just goes for everything in life. I don't think everyone should be a doctor. I don't think everyone should be a lawyer. But I'll say that this female officer, this trooper, kudos to her. I mean, and it's like you said, it was a mindset. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She was aggressive. She was decisive. And I'm glad it worked out. And I'm glad she's okay.
We all are. God bless her. God bless the men and women in law enforcement who go out there and do the job that most people would never sign up for. For your Leo Nation, I am the Chief with Officer Arrue. Thank you very much. God bless you all. We'll see you next time here on your Leo Nation.
God bless.